You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Historian uncovers a 140-year-old legal secret behind today's political chaos, based on an article by Matthew Rossett. Trump is using the machinery that was built for him. The story is not chaos. The useful thing in this source is not the familiar warning that Trump is dangerous. That part is obvious. The real point is that the danger is institutional, not merely personal. Trump is not improvising from the sidelines. He is operating through voter suppression, court-made corporate power, and a Republican political culture that has learned to survive by narrowing who gets to count. If this story is framed as a personality problem, it misses the mechanism. The mechanism is power deciding who may vote, who may speak, and whose money counts as speech. The court handed power a weapon. The source's strongest argument is its account of how corporate personhood was built by legal fraud, then normalized through Supreme Court decisions. The pattern matters more than the legal trivia. A clerk, a justice, railroads, and later judges turned a category mistake into constitutional doctrine, then used that doctrine to grant corporations speech rights, privacy rights, and procedural shields ordinary people do not have. That is not abstract jurisprudence. It is a transfer of governing authority. Once money could behave like speech, corporations no longer merely influence politics. They become one of its commanding interests, with the courts laundering their reach. Voter suppression is governance. The source says Trump wants to rig the 2026 midterms through purges, ID demands, troops near polling places, ballot seizures, and mail-in interference. That is not stray misconduct. It is a strategy of rule by subtraction. The same logic appears in the 2024 examples cited here: mass purges, signature challenges, provisional ballot traps, shortened hours, poll-in-place moves, and bomb threats. According to the source, Greg Palast's post-2024 analysis found about 4 million legally qualified voters were prevented from voting, enough, the interview argues, to have changed the outcome. Whether every detail of that claim survives scrutiny is not the point here. The point is that the system's beneficiaries understand suppression as a viable governing tool. When Republicans cannot win a larger electorate, they work to shrink the electorate. Scapegoats cover the theft. The article is blunt about the Republican method: identify a villain, divert attention, and keep people from asking why wealth has moved upward for 45 years. That is the real political service of the anti-black, anti-immigrant, anti-trans, and anti-poor rhetoric described here. It is not just prejudice. It is distraction in the service of redistribution upward. The source is right to connect this to material outcomes. Tax cuts for billionaires, debt for everyone else, unions gutted, the middle class hollowed out, and then a cultural panic manufactured to keep the injured arguing with each other instead of with the people taking the money. That is not confusion. It is deliberate misdirection. Democrats cannot stay half-converted. The interview is also unsparing about Democrats who are on the take, corporate-funded, and willing to vote against their own coalition. That matters because a Democratic coalition cannot fight oligarchy while part of its selected class is financed by it. The source is strongest when it treats this as a structural problem, not a morality play. But the Democratic Party also appears here as the only plausible institutional vehicle against authoritarian rule, which is the correct baseline. The mistake would be treating that as an excuse for complacency. Democrats do not need more ceremonious language about democracy. They need discipline against corporate capture, cleaner loyalty to working people, and less dependence on the consultants who have spent decades mistaking surrender for pragmatism. The larger pattern. This story is about minority rule trying to harden itself into permanence. The courts normalize corporate domination. Republicans launder plutocracy through racial and cultural panic. Trump pushes the suppression tactics into open view, and the political class is asked to pretend this is all just turbulence. It is not turbulence. It is a long-running project to make democracy permissive for capital and increasingly inaccessible to everyone else. Trump is not the rupture from that system. He is what it looks like when the system stops bothering to disguise itself. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article, with the automated voice of Ryan. Thanks for listening.